Let this remind you why you once feared the dark.
You just start with me.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Lads Discuss video, but this time it is with Richie Boy, good old Saber King.
What's up?
Yeah, so, been a while since we've done a Bill and Richard, or just in general, like a Bill Discuss with Richard in quite some time. The last one we did was Hellboy, and people really liked it. People really enjoyed our thoughts on that film.
Yes, they did. They enjoyed it immensely.
We did also say we'll eventually review the second one. We never got around to that. Loads of games came out. A lot of things happened at Death Battle. There was a Ruby x Justice League crossover. There was a lot of things coming out that me and the lads wanted to do, but me and Richard we would inevitably get back to doing like other comic book story movies that didn't have anything to do with Marvel or DC. It's kind of nice to actually give other comic book adaptation or movie adaptations of different comic books a chance.
I agree. It feels very good to be back and doing these, and I'm happy that I reached out to you and reminded you. It's like, hey, we used to do this. Can you come back?
Yeah, so this wasn't a me thing. Richard had to pretty much remind me, like, hey, we haven't actually kept that promise of reviewing this film. It's like, no, we have not. So, while Death Battle is still like in the progress of coming back, and while a lot of things have been coming out with a lot of Marvel and DC projects, I'm looking forward to, I think my most anticipated project, after the Deadpool one came out, I'm looking forward to the new Superman film coming out, but, there's also a Hellboy movie coming out, which looks alright, but got us both thinking, hey, let's finally talk about the second film, called Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, with all the cast coming back for their roles, excluding some characters that didn't reappear in the movie. I've watched it a few times, didn't really explain why they weren't there, but unless I might have missed some dialogue. And your favorite character from the last movie, he got transported to Antarctica by Hellboy. Right, okay. I didn't hate him as a character. Okay, so I guess we'll kind of recap our thoughts on the first film. Has my opinion changed on it? No, I actually still think the first film's like an underrated masterpiece. Like, yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, yeah, I criticized the main villain. Rasputin was not that interesting a villain. Hell, in real life, he wasn't that interesting as a villain, so why would he be interested in a movie? And, the CGI, yeah, doesn't hold up well, but at the same time, if we can excuse like Deadpool and Wolverine having bad CGI in some scenes, I think we can cut Hellboy a break.
I agree, yeah.
Especially since they excel at practical effects, which we'll get around to talking about practical effects, because whereas the first film was pretty great with them, this film takes it to a whole new level. And
yes,
I'm also happy to say the CGI, while it doesn't look, it's not a Jurassic Park levels, it's still pretty convincing, like, effect. So
I think that's a good segue then to talking about this movie is the effects.
Yeah, well, before that, let's talk about what exactly is the Golden Army. Now, as far as comic books is aware, I'm not too familiar if the Golden Army was part of the comic books. I know Rasputin and all the antagonists of the first film were introduced in the comic books, but they weren't like long-standing villains. They were Hellboy's one of those characters where they have some story arcs from what I've been told, but most of the time Hellboy's kind of like Kevin Conroy's Batman series, where each new episode he was dealing with a new threat or a returning threat. There was never like an ongoing like arc or something like that. At least
right.
So this film kind of has that tradition as well, whereas everything, like the organization that Hellboy's part of, is just going about its business. However, Hellboy is kind of feeling the anxious need to get out. And
Right.
this
Yes.
plot I like for a lot of reasons, and I'll get to it eventually. So the main plot, though, and I do kind of like how they work this into the story. So their flashback goes with Hellboy and his father, played by the good old John Hurt, R.I.P. my boy.
Yes. Rest in peace, John Hurt.
It hurt hearing that news.
Yes.
Now, some people have made complaints that this kind of feels very like coincidental and very like, oh look, how convenient that this story will eventually tie into Hellboy's story. And so I kind of have a counter to this. Okay, so first of all, the organization that Broom's organization was part of, they look into every sort of like mythology and stories and fantasies. That's kind of their thing. So they want to discover whether that's real or, it's just false rumors. And, Hellboy's very interested in a lot of these stories because obviously he's a fantastical creature as well. And his father read to him, these stories. One, to prepare him for these threats, and two, just because this scene, even though it's very short, it goes to show why the Professor and Hellboy have this really strong relationship that the last film did not have. Like we talked about in the first film, like Hellboy, despite being this badass looking demon slayer, he had that like, the moment he sees his dad, he's like, crap. Like he hides the cigar behind his back, like, it's dad. Even when he died, like he didn't immediately recover from that. And
I agree with you on that.
And just this moment here, like, there's that typical, like, he wants to watch TV, but the Professor won't let him because it's time for his bed. But then he's all like, oh, read me a bedtime story, Dad. So it's kind of comedic as well. You have this, when you look in the lore of Hellboy, he's literally the bringer of the apocalypse. And he's just there saying, Daddy, read me a bedtime story. There's some sort of, like, humor to that, like, when you realize just how powerful Hellboy is. But then you just have that little moment where he reads him the story. Which, yeah, it is just a plot device to explain, like, what the Golden Arm's going to be. But there's a good time skip. Like, this is just a random story that gets told to him at some point. You probably think he's been told, like, all sorts of stories. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if he was told about the Rasputin story at some point.
Well, okay, so just to, add on to that, this is when Hellboy wants a story. This does imply that Professor Broom has told Hellboy dozens of stories, and that's kind of a way that they bond over is their stories and what it ultimately means to Hellboy at a young age, that he gets to hear these fantastical stories about these things that he thinks are just stories because he is a child. He doesn't believe these things are real, and his father obviously knows different. But there's that also that hidden sense that Professor Broom is letting Hellboy keep his innocence. Like even though he's a demon who doesn't look like a normal child, he still raises him as a normal child, and there's that sense of naivety that he'll keep even as he grows into an adult. And I really like how also too, we should mention this flashback takes place during Christmas time, and one of my favorite memorable scenes from this is just when Professor Broom tells him you have to be asleep when he comes down the chimney, and Hellboy looks over and he sees it's not even a chimney. So how's he going to do it? And Professor Broom's like, oh, he has his ways. That's so beautiful, and it really made me miss Professor Broom. I'm very happy that Guillermo del Toro got John Hurt back just for this one scene. He was only on set for like a day, but it's like, man, to just have that connective piece. And also too, I disagree with people as well. I think having this be the plot device that sets up the Golden Army is very good, and especially when the way John Hurt tells the story, accompanied by a different animation style.
Yes, oh, I love
Where
the
we
animation.
see,
It's very like Tim Burton
yes,
like.
it's I can't remember what this particular art style is called, but I've always been fascinated by it when I was introduced to it uh, over 15 years ago when this movie came out. So it was very eye catching, and I loved hearing the story about because that's the thing we should also say. This really isn't just about the Golden Army. This is a story about Prince Nuada and what he's ultimately going to go through. So I like how it not only sets up the title characters, but it also sets up the main villain.
Yeah, which I think is a good way to talk about it. So the film kind of starts off with this character. So, first of all, the reason this flashback also works is because you don't have the main villain having to be like, as you know, we were betrayed by humans after our peace treaty. Because you know a lot of films do that, where they can't be bothered to do a flashback, so they have to have the villain explain to someone that probably already knows the story of their people and explain to them like, hey, yeah, do you remember when that happened to us and that's why we were angry? It's like, yeah, I was there. You ordered it. So it didn't feel like forced in. It felt like, okay, here's a good way to expand the story, as well as not like forcing pointless exposition. And now let's talk about the glow up of villains, because you know the first thing we said, the first film was a masterpiece. It just had a weak villain, but if we could give loads of films a masterpiece, even though the main villains weren't that interesting, then I think it was fair for Hellboy. This film, though, not only has a great actor behind the role, it has a really compelling character, and also it shows how much of a deadly threat he was. Because Rasputin, he wasn't threatening. Like, if you
He was Rasputin was just a man trying to play God, whereas this villain is completely different, and that's why I think we like him.
yeah. So the water comes from like the wood elves, aren't they?
Yes, yes, the Wood Elves. You're
Yeah.
correct, the elves.
So, if for those that probably don't know, humanity and the Wood Elves had a peace treaty where Wood Elves would say, "Hey, we'll stop slaughtering you with our golden immortal army. Just stay the hell out of our forest." Humanity were like, "No problem, fam." You know, us humans, those we're kind of pieces of crap. So yeah, we went back on a deal, but the elves had this honor that they must at least honor the treaty, even if humanity doesn't. Nawada, though, he doesn't really believe that's the fate of his people. Like, you know, because there's this great moment in the opening that it's not really talked about. So you see the villain training, which it looks like a temple at first, like typical montage showing the villain training and stuff like that. Like, oh, he's getting ready for war. And when you think it's actually a temple, it's actually just near some crappy, like, subway.
Yeah, it's underneath a subway.
Yeah, so this
And
prince, who would normally you'd see like princes or people in those sort of positions be training in like amongst deadly warriors. No, he's just near some alleyway, some homeless person took a piss in. And you can even kind of see this little moment where he's just angry when he hears the train come by. Like, it's like he's thinking, ugh, this is what I'm reduced to. Like, no epic,
well, there's also
no
okay.
kingdom, no epic temple of worshippers. No, you're just training where people go on their daily routine. Like, how demeaning is that? And you could kind of understand why he's like, yeah, this is not for my people. Heck, even when you actually see the kingdom, inevitably in the beginning of the film, it's not really a kingdom. Sure, the elves have made it look nice, but it's an abandoned factory. Like, this is what the king's throne is. It's just a bunch of pipes and a radiator. It's like, really? Is this really worth the treaty?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not trying to make him sympathetic, like, because the person is a piece of crap. Like, he does horrible things, even to his own father. But unlike, you know, with Thanos, where it's like, oh, we can understand why he needs to genocide people. You know, just ignore the fact he literally has a device that could probably end world hunger without genocide. You can understand this guy's frustration. It's like, what is this really what we're reduced to? Just hiding in like some crappy abandoned place? It's like, yeah, do you know what? I could kind of understand that. That is not fair. That is crap.
Well, I mean, what also makes this good is Prince Nuada is, see, in my opinion, as as a writer who's always believed, if you're going to make your villain sympathetic, then the best way to do that is to make him believe he's the hero of his own story and he is on a noble crusade to try and bring something or someone back to what it once was, but is he's viewed from the outside as a villain, but he doesn't believe he's a villain. He believes that his noble intentions are good, they're just, but at the end of the day, you need somebody from a different perspective to show them why what they're doing is wrong. And Prince Nuada definitely falls into that camp where, yes, he came from a noble race of elves that were losing to mankind. But then once they created the Golden Army, or they had the Golden Army created for them, then it just turns into, okay, they were essentially at the top of the food chain, but the king, and this is what I love, even though we don't get to see much of the king, but the king is shown to us and told that he is a sympathetic hierarchy. He does not like that the cost of what it took for his kingdom to be where it was came at the expense of people dying, and he chose to have a treaty because he believed, okay, look, I don't want to kill any more people, so I will call a truce with the humans. We will go back into the forest while they take the landscape. We will also take two pieces of the crown that make the Golden Army, and the humans get one piece. So I do like that there's a little bit of story going on with the king as well, but Prince Wada is the one who calls bullshit on this. He doesn't believe that the king, his father, is right to want to compromise with these humans. And throughout the first couple of minutes, yes, like you said, his body language shows that he's still very bitter. He's rage driven towards humanity, and he believes that humanity has taken his birthright.
Yeah. The thing I also kind of like is that, one, we get a really badass action sequences, which this will go into talk about practical effects as well. So, Nawada kills his dad. R.I.P. Wood Boy. However, I do like the fact he didn't go like bloodthirsty when he did it. Like, there was genuine sadness when he killed his dad, because obviously he even says to him, "I always loved you." It's like he had a lot of respect for his father, but he just thought, that typical character trait where they're like, he's too old, he's unwise, and he's weak. But we also get a full-on practical fight with all these. I will admit, these knight designs are a bit out of place when you look at the wood elves. Like, these wood elves look very like Lord of the Rings-esque, like very like almost like priest-like, even the king. But then you have these weird-looking knights that have this very like, I don't know, edgy,
cumbersome.
Yeah, like these edgy, like darkness type of enemies. Which, to be fair though, they look sick. I'm not saying they don't look badass. No, they do. And credit to the costume designers in this film, because they went beyond.
Oh, we're going to be praising them a lot.
Like that fight sequence. This is the thing that made me like Nawada more than. I hope I am saying his name right. It's just how it's spelled and how I'd say it with my accent. Yeah, when they do showcase like the practical effects that go into the character's movements, he is a deadly warrior. Like, obviously he had help from, I do love the fact this giant psychic monster of his is called, what's he called, Mr. Wick?
Mr. Wink.
Wink, okay, that's even funnier. I love that.
Yes, Mr. Wink.
Oh,
who is also a practical design. They actually have a big guy in that suit,
Yeah.
and the only thing that is CG is the hand when it launches. But there are actual shots where they did use a chain uh, for Mr. Wink.
Yeah. Yeah, they could have, this sort of scene here, which I'll play on screen for people, if this was made now, they would just CGI part because it's a lot cheaper and there's no need for actors to get hurt. However, you could feel, however, the thing that I think gets lost when you do things like that, and especially with a lot of films today, you kind of miss the whole, realism of the fight, as well as, the stake of the fight. But then, in this fight, when he's clashing swords with these guys, he's showing that he's a badass warrior, but it looks and feels real. Like, you feel every sword clash, and there's even a moment he briefly gets hurt, and this is a good way of
we
showing.
Forgot to talk.
But this was going to be my segue. So his sister, the princess, they're both, their life sources are connected to one another, and you just know. I don't know, the film would have just just drop this out of nowhere just to explain something to the plot. But they do a good way of showing, during this fight, while he's getting ahead of himself, one guard gets a lucky hit in and his nose bleeds. It's nothing life-threatening from that nosebleed. It's just that guy just got lucky. But then the camera pans and shows his sister also has the nosebleed, showing that to the audience about having to go they'll die if one of them gets killed. The movie lets you put it together that, when one gets hurt, so does the other.
Yes, I agree. This is a great, and she, but also too. Okay, so backpedaling just a bit. I do like the introduction of the sister, the princess, because earlier on we see that Nuada and Mr. Wink are coming in to visit the father, but it is customary that they give up their weapons. At least Nuada. Mr. Wink can't give up his weapon. That's his firearm. And Nuada is reluctant to give up his weapon. That's, it's to quote the Mandalorian, this weapon is my religion. But then the sister comes in and she's able to kind of just mellow him out and ask him politely, please, brother, comply. And then and then as soon as he hears her voice, he turns to her and he says, for you, sister, anything? Like, he values his sister. He genuinely loves her and cares for her safety because her safety is his safety. So there is that kind of, not respect, but it's okay, I would say that he's more connected to his sister than his father kind of deal, where these two, I don't know, there's so much detail in just in those simple exchanges between the brother and the sister that you can just make speculation of, oh, they must have been close as children, they must have both have been inseparable, and then you can imagine when the brother left, the sister was hurt because she knew her brother would do something foolish. So I do like that little detail.
Yeah.
It very much reminds me of my relationship with my sister in real life. So it's very well done. And yes, no, and also, okay, so going back to what you were saying about the practicality and the choreography, I also just want to say, we need to talk about, because when Guillermo Navarro's cinematography, he comes back from Hellboy 1. He also was the cinematographer for Pan's Labyrinth, another Del Toro movie. His cinematography in this movie is so beautiful. Like, even when we get action sequences, it does not, there's no shaky cam. Everything's steady. The camera is moving in different angles. There are some scenes where it's almost one take. But I just remember this Hellboy movie being the best looking of the two.
Yeah. And
especially this action sequence, because if they did these action sequences today, Marvel would just do multiple different cuts to try and emulate fast-paced motion.
Yeah. but it's just jarring to watch. But yeah, we'll talk more about the villain, of course, as we lead to the end of the film. So let's actually talk about the main plot to do with Hellboy. I mean, I know technically the Golden Army is the main plot, but Hellboy, during one mission where they fight these tooth fairies, which I'm not gonna lie, love their designs, and I just love the fact they literally start by eating at the teeth. It's both very horrifying, and though you'd never fully see them kill off all these people in like this room, you're left with the leftovers, and you can piece together like, oh god, how horrible it must have been when these people.
To quote Abe, to quote Abe, all they do is eat, then poop, then eat, and then poop again. Remind you of anyone?
Yeah, and the thing that's also great about it, you don't fully see it happen, but you see like Hellboy's partner, this random guy, which again, I do like the fact they continue this trope where, though in a lot of films these nobodies that are just meant to be killed off just to show the horrifying effect, but in the first film Hellboy was saddened when it happened, and his handler was just kind of like mocking it, and he was really annoyed about it. It's like, simple to a cop when they lose their partner. It's like, yeah, you don't joke about it. These aren't nobodies. These are people I've worked with. When he sees his partner getting eaten alive and all that's left is his skull, you see Hellboy and just like, oh shit. And he even says his name like in a very like saddened tone, because again, this is probably someone who he's probably had drinks with, or someone who he's at least spoken to, and then suddenly just seeing him devoured is sad. I like the fact they kept that trait on, but it also goes into like, well, during a accidental explosion caused by his girlfriend, which we'll get to the side plot with this because it's one of my only criticisms, but I'll go into more detail why I don't think it hinders the film that much. So Hellboy gets launched out of the building during an explosion, and he's revealed to the public. Now, I was kind of wondering if this is going to do the typical cliche of like, at first everyone hates him, and then, oh, we embrace him, we love him. No, this film doesn't do that. No, people are genuinely scared of Hellboy. Not just how he looks, but just the fact, well, the stories that probably have spread around this world about these monsters. And I do like the fact that never gets resolved. Like, because, yeah, you get that in a lot of films, like, even good old masterpieces like The Iron Giant, like, people eventually respect those sort of monsters, but Hellboy never gets that because, yeah, people are horrified of things that are different. Not just and Hellboy, like, when you think about it, Hellboy doesn't really do anything that horrifying. He saves people, but people still look at him because he's just so unnerving for them to look at.
Okay, so it's funny you mentioned that because that is one of my many criticisms with this movie, is how inconsistent it is with Hellboy and his effect on humanity. So the what I love about this introduction, this is probably, in my opinion, next to The Dark Knight, this was the best way to reintroduce a character back on screen to the audience. We get a presence about Hellboy, and then eventually, obviously, we see him, and then we see he's going out on his mission. But before that, Abe and of course Manny are talking about Hellboy's exposure, because Hellboy has been making the rounds. He's been talking with civilians. He even poses for a photo. He even you can imagine he probably was interviewed on YouTube. He's wanting to fit in with humanity. He's wanting to be like with normal people. And the reason he gets caught in that accidental explosion, and this is what is good, is that he chooses to be near that scene, and he chooses to be blown out of the building just so he can be exposed to the public, because he wants the public's adoration. And then later on, you see he's watching TVs, and everyone's questioning him, interviewing him. He's happy. He's having a ball of his life just being on camera and being in public. So the public do seem to like him, and they do want to know more about him. and then we'll get to this later. Then it just kind of flips it, and it's very inconsistent, and I don't like it.
I actually like it for multiple reasons, and I guess this will go into like a good segue into Ron Perlman as Hellboy as well. So now I think this could go into like public image, because have you ever? Okay, so this might be a weird comparison. Ripley for Nintendo like was a highly requested Smash character to get into Smash Bros. Meme wise, or just like people just thought it would be cool. Well, when he finally got into Smash Bros, he wasn't really talked about anymore when it came to Smash Bros. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, we request that and that actually happened. In this case, the story around Hellboy to the public, people were generally interested in. Who is he? Is he real? Is he fake? Well, he is real, and people might be underwhelmed by him, and a lot of people are also intimidated, because you've got to think stories that came out of this guy, the many hoax and conspiracies about, these guys took down Hitler, even though he was meant to have died a year before his apparently reported death. And all these stories that have probably been spread through all the TV and stuff like that. But, well, Hellboy's now revealed, and he doesn't look too intimidating, but he looks intimidating enough where you don't feel as though he is a welcoming person. And I think Ron Perlman, perfect, again, it comes back to play as Hellboy, and I think he is still, to me, the best version of Hellboy. Because he's comedic, he's sarcastic, but you have those little humour moments. Like, for instance, he saves his town from these deadly killer plant. And in most films, this would have been the cliche moment of everyone's like, he's not so bad. He's just like us. No, people still refer to him as a freak. And when his girlfriend was about to, go ape shit and, fry everyone, Hellboy just stops her. Because there's that moment he realizes that everything he wanted to be exposed, to be loved by everyone, well, you got what you wanted. Not everyone's going to view you like that. Many are going to look at you as a monster. And Hellboy
I do agree with you.
Eventually, Hellboy just accepts that. Near the end of the film, yeah, he fully accepts that. And you know what? He doesn't care. He's like, you know what? I'm done just trying to be a public image. I don't want to be this hero or something like that. I just want to be me now.
So I wouldn't say... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But this also goes to a thing that I did also kind of feel as though that the first film kind of hinted at Hellboy and Abe had a very good, cooperative, partnership, but I'd say it's stronger in this film. Because you truly do feel as though Abe and Hellboy do act like partners. They watch each other's backs, and, they're both equally skilled. Yeah, Hellboy's obviously more powerful than Abe, but I like the fact they don't make Abe look useless. He's not just a bookworm. He can use a gun, he can also fight, and, he's also that person, which, this goes into the side plot, he was able to figure out that Hellboy's girlfriend was pregnant, which... I know Hellboy's a humanoid-looking character, but the idea of Hellboy doing a Blair like that is... I don't know why. I'm just glad they don't show it. Because, I don't know.
Well, yeah, of course they don't.
I mean, it's fitting, a hell demon and a fire lady getting together. The theme makes sense. It's just crazy to think, oh my god, she did that. But there's also this nice moment when Abe and Hellboy are both obviously depressed because, Hellboy's like, man, no one actually loves me. They think I'm a monster, and Abe is like, I'm in love. Which, it's both a comedic but also a very heartwarming moment where, they're just getting drunk. It's just boys hanging out, drinking. And, yeah, you do feel like they have that brotherhood, that, that friendship. And it's not just, Abe is the dopey one and Hellboy's the badass one who has to save him all the time.
Yeah, so getting into it, I do agree with you. So I do think Perlman's performance in this is obviously the best it ever was. There's a lot more nuance in it. he doesn't just play it straight. There is a lot of hidden depth to the performance that is elevated by the script. I also do like how there is a sense of maturity and growth this time around, because the first one, it was very much about he's trying to get the girl, and he's trying to get the girl to understand him. And in this movie, it's essentially Hellboy is going through that high school relationship phase where he has to learn boundaries. He needs to learn how to communicate, learn how to give the girl her space, make her feel like it's a two-way street. So I very much feel like Hellboy is learning what a relationship is by being with Liz, and I love that. I do like what you said, how by the end there's a sense of he's fighting. He's being pulled against two sides. He can either be he's fighting to still be a BPRD agent, or he's fighting to just be with humanity. Even if it means humanity will never accept him, he's okay with that because he wants to be amongst them. And there's a sense that he's looking to belong, especially when you get to the troll market.
Yes.
And I do, yeah, no, it just goes with what we're saying. And I don't agree with him wanting to be a public hero, because see, that's the thing. Hellboy is a hero, but by the end, it's always just been, okay, but what is he a hero for? Who is he saving? Is he saving the people that will potentially love and not love him, or is he saving himself from being embraced by them? So there's that sense that, okay, Hellboy is trying to figure out what is his goal, what is he going to do after everything's said and done. So I like that there's a sense of progression going on. And then, yeah, same thing with Abe. Abe gets a lot more to do. Doug Jones really gets to flex as Abe. And I feel like this is really his best performance as the character. And I can see why Guillermo del Toro would continue to work with him, which is kind of funny because in a Guillermo del Toro movie, Doug Jones would come back to play a amphibian creature again for him.
Yeah.
That would also win an Oscar.
How convenient. Plot twist.
Yeah, exactly.
Set in the same universe.
I could see that. So yes, I do agree. These are two great, wonderful performances.
Do you know what? Speaking of performances, though, I actually feel like there's a performance in this film that not many people talk about, which is kind of sad.
Is it Kraust?
Yeah. Because,
yeah, you read my mind.
So again, I'm not sure if this person is, an actual character in the comic books. But I was actually generally...
We should just have a counter.
Yeah, but here's the thing that's crazy. I did not actually know when I watched it as a kid that he was voiced, not played, I should say. The person in the suit was not this character. Seth MacFarlane. I was like, really? I was like, no, it can't be. But when I was looking at clips and rewatching the film, I was like, how did I never piece that together? Because usually Seth MacFarlane has that voice that... I also just kind of want to give a little mini rant. Seth MacFarlane is an underrated, actor and comedian. Okay, yes, his format in Family Guy has gotten stale. Here's the thing people always tend to forget. He doesn't write Family Guy anymore. He just voices the characters he's paid to voice. He has long moved away from Family Guy. He said he's done with it. He's moving on to doing his own things. If people actually watch more stuff he's done, you can easily tell, Oh, are you alright there?
Yes. I think I said Orville.
Okay, yeah, so I think we're the microphone, it went all staticky. But yeah, do you know what? I've started watching that lately, and I'm just like, this is funny. I always thought people said Seth MacFarlane stuff was boring and cliche. It's just, and his character in this film, okay, first of all, I love this character's design. He is he's not a ghost. He's this smoky plasma sort of character as it's described, and he needs this suit because not to keep him alive, it's so that he stays together, and also just so the effects artists can just show off their skills. Let's be real.
Yes, and think of this character like a reverse Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, and the thing I like about this character, one, because he doesn't have a face a lot of the time, you have to tell his character from his movement. So, like, when there's a moment he's about to get punched in the face because he was being cheeky to a troll, he has to be like, "Rah." But also, he's not. When you first see him, you think he's going to be that cliche of, he's the new handler, they're not going to get along, he's a jackass. No, similar to Abe in this film, he's also kind of a badass. Like, the moment he stands... This moment is still... If you look on YouTube, this scene is rewatched so many times. When they're in the locker room and Kraus just goes up to him and goes, "I can take you." And Hellboy's just like, "Can you say that again?" And he stands up to him, tries to give him the typical, like, your anger's your problem. You think Hellboy's just straight up killed him? And I do love that whole, he still has that childlike demeanor, like, you know when a kid does something bad, like they hurt their sibling and they're crying on the floor, he's like, "Are you alright? Can you stop? Come on, please stop." Like, there's that, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that." But then Kraus just straight up kicks his ass with lockers. It's so funny to watch, and to this day is still to this day my favourite scene of, like, a side character in the Hellboy film.
Well, what I also love about Professor Johann Kraus is how much of, very much like Hellboy, so he's not just a one or two dimensional character. There's layers to him that are revealed later on, which I appreciate. But what I really, just talking about the design, once again, this just goes to show you, if this design was made today, obviously it would be motion capture. But the fact that, no, this was an actual functioning suit. There was a person that had to wear the Kraus helmet, and very similar, actually not similar, very much like the effects on episode 4 of Star Wars: A New Hope. They would have the person underneath the suit do the dialogue, and then when it came time to the finished film, Seth MacFarlane would come in and he would dub over the actor. And because the actor in the suit was talking very low, you could barely hear him. It made dubbing much better. It wasn't like David Prowse in the original Star Wars trilogy, where it was kind of, it wasn't as intimidating when he was talking until James Earl Jones did the voice. So I very much like that. And again, yes, the suit moved and functioned very well. Obviously, the actor would get very hot and sweaty in that outfit, but the way Johann Kraus expresses himself, like you said, through his body movement, or hell, even just the little mechanical mouth flap that's in the front of the helmet, I thought that was very well done.
Don't you mean Hellboy?
Yeah. And I also, again, Seth MacFarlane delivers probably one of his best performances in this movie. I didn't know it was him either. I mean, that's the thing. I kind of forget that this man can do a pretty good German accent.
Well, he does so many great accents that people just don't give the man credit for. Like, this guy voices, like, I think over, like, 20 characters on Family Guy. Like, this is something I didn't even know. He voiced Consuela, the Mexican maiden lady. No, we need more lemon pledge. I was like, that's not Seth MacFarlane. And I looked, I was like, oh my god, he really did voice her. Like, again, Seth MacFarlane's talent slept on. It's like, yeah, sometimes his humour, it's not always there. But, you know, when he hits out the park, he hits out the park. Seriously, people, watch the TED TV show. That show was pretty hilarious.
Absolutely, yes, I agree. And
this,
also,
I wouldn't be surprised if some of his lines in this film were improv'd. Like,
honestly, if they were, then I couldn't tell you where. It generally feels like he plays it straight. And I do like that we get to see some badass moments with him whenever he has to exhale the himself out of the suit, and you get to see him possessing and taking over anything that is mechanical, living, or dead. It's very nice, very well done. And there's also a bit of tragedy to him, like I said, where we find out, at least from what little he gives us, is that he was once married, but then something happened to his wife, and that same incident made him what he was. And we never find out what that was, but
Yeah.
I would have really liked to have seen his whole story.
Yeah, which will go to the final say of this review. So overall, I say the cast and everything like that is spot on. The action sequences are also really fun to watch. For instance, there's a scene like, is it kind of pointless? Kind of. Is it cool to watch though? Hell yeah. Where Nuada decides he's going to summon his Pokemon, which is a giant tree. And we got a pretty sick action sequence. Now, compared to the CGI fight in the last film, where it looked like a video game, really. Well, again, I wouldn't say this CGI is amazing looking compared to like a lot of classic films like Jurassic Park. It is still really fun to watch, and yes, you can understand why in some instances they had to use CGI. Like, for instance, when Hellboy had to use his tail to hold the baby, because obviously to use practical effects for that would probably look awful. But you know, when Hellboy's climbing up that sign, that's actually Ron Perlman climbing up the sign. And also, I just like the giant big-ass revolver shotgun he's got when fighting the monster. It's so cartoonishly big, but you could totally buy...
Yeah, the grenade launcher.
Yeah, like, it's so cartoonishly big, but for someone like Hellboy, yeah, you can picture someone like Hellboy wielding that, because this is a man that fires a revolver, which, if you were to try and fire it, would launch you off your feet, even if you're using both your hands. Hellboy could just use one hand, it just feels like an ordinary pistol to him.
Yes, no, I do love the introduction of Big Baby. I thought that it was very good. And then, but also too, so this isn't just a mindless action sequence to fill in for time. No, the action in this movie, again, this is what makes Del Toro an amazing director and writer, is that there's substance to the action. The action is aiding the story rather than trying to compete with it. And what I love about this scene, it's always been kind of, gotten me a little bit emotional. I'm not, I wasn't bawling my eyes out, but it did make me feel sad, was it's Hellboy is fighting this plant creature but he's hesitating to kill it, despite the fact that, okay, it's a monster, it's terrorizing the people, it's his job to kill it, but he's not killing it. And then Nuada comes in and is surprised by his hesitation, and tells him, like, if you kill this, she'll be the last of her kind. Her species is gone if you pull that trigger. And Hellboy is contemplating, what does he do? And there's a great moment where he looks at both the creature and the baby. And once again, it's Hellboy choosing. What does he choose? Does he choose his own kind that will accept him? Or does he choose humanity? And he doesn't even say anything. He pulls the trigger. And that tells you that, okay, he made his choice. And there's that great scene where the creature blooms. It literally blooms and blossoms. And it creates like artificial snow. And it's a very morbid and kind of bittersweet scene that has so much going on underneath it.
But what's even sadder about that scene is that, again, in a lot of films, this would have been the moment humanity accepted him because he saved the baby. But no, they straight up point guns at him, call him a freak, and you see the look on Hellboy's face. Again, Ron Perlman sells this. Like, he looks like, yeah, he's had people throw beer cans at him, he's had people insult him, and you know what I think, in this line of work, he's been insulted by all sorts of people and villains. But there was something different about this. After doing something which many people witnessed, they saw him kill this monster, and they still treat him like... And some people have said that's very unrealistic. Honestly, in today's day and age, I could totally buy that. Hell, like, there's so many YouTubers that do good things, but because at one point they got involved in a petty drama, that diminishes that good they did.
I agree with you. I do. So when I said that I didn't like this inconsistency, I mainly am talking about the inconsistency in the film itself. I do understand that human nature is a bit like, let's be honest, it's inconsistent itself,
Yeah,
and there is always the you fear what you don't understand, but over time people will accept you. It depends on how you present yourself. But what I really don't like about this scene that comes out of nowhere, and again, maybe that is a testament to what Del Toro's writing really is about, is that there's irony in it. That's the whole point, is that Hellboy chose his side. He chose humanity, but humanity will not let him in. And that scene is very tragic. And I do love, again, I will talk about her performance towards the end, but I do have to say, I always got so emotionally charged seeing Liz come in and defend Hellboy, because that is the man she loves. That's the father of her children. And she does care about him. And they have been bickering a lot, but there that great moment where she comes in, and as soon as somebody throws a tomato at Hellboy, she gets pissed off and she's ready to just go full scorched earth on them. And Hellboy, like you said, he has to just calm her down and say, no, let's just go home. And I do wish, again, if this movie had been longer, I would have loved to have seen some resolution to this.
yeah. We might have done that in the
Um,
third film, but in a way, I do kind of like we never get to know, or maybe if they ever did, accept Hellboy, because I think this goes to show his character. Like, he's got to finally embrace the fact, yeah, he is a monster. Even though, yeah, he's a stand-up guy. Like, if I saw this man save us from a plant monster, I wouldn't see him as a monster. But obviously, when people are scared after, a giant plant monster and then it killed everyone, it's hard to see that.
right, yeah, no. Yeah, exactly. But again, that's kind of the beauty of this is, and by the way, as somebody who has read the comics, this is not indicative of Mike Mignola's writing, because Mike Mignola's Hellboy and Del Toro's Hellboy are two completely different characters. So the beauty about Del Toro's Hellboy is that he is a man. Not a man. He's a demon that is caught between two sides. And you would think, and what I love, but then again, what I really love about what we've been hammering home here is that Hellboy in these two movies, he may not have humanity on his side, but he does have friends that are humans, and those are the agents that he gets along with, who he genuinely sees as his friends. They're people that he cares about, and he feels responsible for them. So it's not as if Hellboy doesn't lack a touch to humanity. He does. It's just, okay, humanity, as in groups of people, are inconsistent, and some of them may accept him, some of them may not accept him. It's just how it goes.
Yeah. I tell you what, we have been nearly talking for an hour, so I kind of want to get to the ending of this film and just talk about overall the reception of this film and, our final say on it. So, we've already praised the action sequences, the practical effects, even some of the CGI looked pretty good for the film, especially considering this film did not have a bigger budget than a lot of films coming out around this time. Yeah, the acting's still great. Now, the finale, though. So, Nawada's finally got in the army, and I'm not gonna lie, I do kind of like that we got an idea just how powerful. We got an idea through the story that Professor Broom told Hellboy in the flashback in the introduction. But I like the fact we get to see it, and it gives you that whole, twist. At first it looks like Hellboy and the others are handling the situation. Even Kraus, man, the freaking MVP, gets out of his suit, possesses one of them, and goes to town on all of them. Like, seriously, people sleep on Kraus. He is a cool character. Like, he's not just a typical, I'm that know-it-all guy that's gonna pretty much tell you, you're doing it wrong. He's pretty much just like, no, there's a reason I'm in this line of work as well, and here's why. I'm possessing these immortal things and kicking their ass. However, yeah, they get back up and self-repair. And, yeah, but however, a great little foreshadowing, which they did at the beginning of the film, because the king mentions that, will there be anyone dare to challenge him for the crown? No one does, because the soldiers are literally meant to obey the crown. However, Hellboy remembered this and decided, I challenge you. And the knight, the Golden Army, had to stop because he challenged him. Now, you would think this would be the moment Nawada shows his true colours, he's actually cowardly and stuff like that. No, he accepts it, because he's a man. He's like, alright then, I accept your challenge. And, yeah, he actually does give Hellboy a run for his money. First of all, the fight sequence is fantastic. And there's even a very, this plot I wasn't too fond of when I first saw it in theatres, but as I've gotten older, I actually now I actually understand the tragedy of Abe and his relationship with the princess, because for someone like Abe, it's hard to probably make a relationship. Hell, it's just hard for the guy to socialize, because he has to constantly be in water substance to stay alive. Sucks being a fish. There's a reason SpongeBob hangs around with other fish.
Yes.
However, he actually found someone who could understand him, and they both actually had a very good chemistry with one another. Unfortunately, as the fight was going on, the sister stepped in, and in a very sad moment, she took her own life just so the brother would also eventually die. It's a very sad moment. It's not just a Deus Ex Machina, because she knew the sacrifice she was going to do. She knew her brother was too far gone, and because Nawada didn't seem like that sort of character that could accept peace with humanity. But you understand why. Humanity have wronged his people for so long. So it is kind of one of those, the sister knew what had to be done. And, yeah. And it's not like a, yay, they defeated the villain. It's kind of one of those, it's very tragic. Because you really wanted them to find a way out of this. But there just wasn't one.
I agree.
And we got a badass fight sequence. Yeah, you could tell there's obvious CGI in a lot of modes, especially for the Golden Army, which makes sense. It's not easy. I can't imagine getting so many people in Golden Armor would be, even if it was fake gold, would be pleasant. But overall, it was a really good fight. And the thing I liked about Ron Perlman's movement as well was that, despite he's a big guy, he's also quite athletic, because, well, obviously he's a demon hunter. He deals with all various different demons, and again, some moments you could tell they had to CGI it up, because obviously if Ron Perlman was in this sort of situation with Gears, he would be crushed to death. But Hellboy gets to show that, yeah, he's also an athletic and fast fighter. He can also outsmart someone like Dumamu. Or Nubara. How am I messing up there? I've been saying it all fine this review.
It's okay.
But yeah, you get the idea though. So it was actually good that they had a moment where, Hellboy actually did show that he is a capable fighter. He's not just, ooh, gun, shooty, shooty, bang, bang.
What I love about this finale and why it's better than, I would say, the first one, hell, I would actually say that this finale, I've made it no secret, I would say that this finale is better than The Dark Knight. Just because there's, it's practical, it's there. Hellboy, when he fights Nuada again, he gets to use ingenuity. He actually gets to catch him off guard, and he shows that he is a capable fighter in his own right. But he's unlike Nuada, who will fight honorably. Hellboy is a dirty fighter. He will use whatever means necessary to take him down. And I do like that. Yes, it is sad that the sister had to die to sacrifice herself, but Nuada even said, he literally said, and he begged Hellboy to kill him because he will not stop. He cannot stop. He admits that this is an obsession and he wants to die. And that's the only way he'll find peace. But Hellboy, being the bigger person, says, no, you lose. That's it, plain and simple. And the sister sacrificing herself it was a sign of, okay, she was doing it. I think it is even said that she did it out of love. It was love for her brother, and it was love for Abe. Um, and the ending too. I just want to talk about it. The ending where they both, all three of them, just say "fuck off" to Manny, and they give him their belts, and they say, "We quit. We're gonna go. Humanity is out there. They may not like us, but we're gonna make it work." And then, of course, Hellboy. I love that scene where he comes back. He says, "On second thought," grabs out the Samaritan. "I think I'll keep this."
Yeah, that is so in character. And you think with Manny trying to like simp because he was a big Krause simp, you'd think he would take in his side, but Krause is just like, "How about you suck my ectoplasmic, what did he say, balls or something?" I don't know.
I think it was either balls or ass.
Yeah, he said it. I think he said it in German. I might be remembering it wrong, but it was just so funny because you could tell that a bit of Hellboy rubbed off on him. You could tell he kind of embraced the whole, rogue-like element. And,
Exactly.
but do you know what? This does kind of go into, I guess we'll get to complaints. I'm not sure if you're agreeing on this. It is tragic that this film was not a success because, unfortunately, it didn't do well, it underperformed, and they cancelled the sequel, which, unfortunately, this film was building up to in a scene when Hellboy gets healed because he's dying from the last encounter with Nuada.
Yes. Okay. The movie did underperform and they even spent. I remember seeing the marketing for this movie. It was just as crazy as The Dark Knight. And their big mistake on that was they chose to release it a week before The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
So the movie was doing strong, but as soon as The Dark Knight came out the next week, it just got lost in the shuffle and it underperformed. And unlike the first movie, unlike the first movie where they greenlit a sequel where Universal, okay, so Sony stopped distributing Hellboy after the first movie and the first two animated movies, after they made strong sales in the DVD market. And Universal picked it up for distribution. And Universal was expecting this movie to not perform good at the box office, but they were hoping the movie would make its money back in DVD and Blu-ray sales. Unfortunately, this didn't happen because in 2008, that's when digital video was taking effect. People could now watch movies on their phones, on their computers. So Hellboy, unfortunately, didn't even make money in that area. So it was a bit of a bomb. Del Toro spent 3 years, starting in 2015 to 2017, to try and get a sequel. He went to studios. He talked to Perlman. He talked to, but nobody wanted to do it. He even talked to Mike Mignola. Mike Mignola said no to his proposal of turning his Hellboy 3 script into a graphic novel. Mike Mignola not holding back his distaste for how Del Toro's interpretation of Hellboy is not what he would have wanted it to be, told him, no, people already complained to me that my stories are confusing. Now they would be more confused if we had two Hellboys. So, no, I politely decline.
Which is kind of stupid, because given the fact, around this time the Dark Knight films had taken effect, the Batman comic books, there was Elseworld stories and other what-if stories that were happening. And not even just with Batman, all sorts of DC and Marvel characters were getting different stories. Ultimate Spider-Man was released at the same time as the mainline Spider-Man comic book, so I just think it was just an excuse that they just couldn't be bothered. But they just tried to, say people wouldn't want that. And now, but this does go into, that unfortunate complaint, because this film has it's not just like, a one scene with, they're foreshadowing. No, this is a long scene hinting that Hellboy in the next film is going to be responsible for something fantastic and catastrophe at the same time. But
Right. Yes. No. You are right.
and it's really, I hate movies that do this, because it's one of the things like with like a lot of Marvel, the MCU and DCU movies were doing, where they have an end credit scene hinting, or even in the movie itself, they hint towards what the next big event is. But because they expect the film to do well and expecting like a lot of people to talk about it, that greenlit the movie. Well, as
Right.
we've seen, even to this day and age, people have not learned that lesson. Like with Black Adam, while being an alright film, they then try to tease, we're going to have Black Adam fight Superman. The film didn't do well, and that scene's now redundant because now they've rebooted. So...
Okay, so, yeah, to quickly talk about that after you.
Yeah, so... It is annoying because it's not even a bad scene. It's a good scene. It's really well acted. The effect on that Death Angel looking guy, like, holy crap! It's like, okay, these guys were not. These guys were clearly not paid enough, because that thing looks like a Resident Evil boss.
Well, okay, if you watch the behind the scenes, which I highly recommend if you have this movie on DVD for you, right? Watch the behind the scenes. They needed that the angel of death, as I'll just call it. They needed that to lift that thing up off the ground. They needed two wires to pull on the wing, to pull on the suit itself, in order to lift this thing up, because it was very heavy, it was very tall, and there were also separate animatronics for the wings that gave it its expression. So yeah, this thing was not just a costume that you could just get up and move around in. No, they needed care and detail to keep it going.
And that's what sells this scene as well, because again, today that would all be CGI, but that effect will never look outdated because it looks like it's there, because it is there. You're looking right at it. These characters aren't just looking at a man in a green suit just being like, look at me. Like, I give credit to, Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame. I love those films. But you can't deny when Thanos is CGI, it's like, yeah, it's kind of funny when you realise these guys are just like charge tackling a man in a green onesie suit.
Well, okay, so to just say this, I think Hellboy, it's taken me over 15, 16 years for this, but I can comfortably say that I'm okay if we would never get a Hellboy 3. Like, okay, 9 years ago when I met, 9 years ago when I met, I'm sorry, not 9, yeah, around 9, 7, 8 years ago when I met Ron Perlman, I told him I was hoping for the best for Hellboy 3. He extended his gratitude to me. He welcomed me as if we were old mates. And he was a very nice fella. But I will say this. I am okay if Hellboy 3 never sees the light of day, because a lot of things have changed at this current point in time. And let me just say this. I think the way Hellboy 2 ends, that's the thing. Del Toro's Hellboy movies do not end setting up a sequel. They do not sequel bait you in the least. No, they're standalone movies that you can watch, you can enjoy. Now, yes, has there been a curiosity of mine? Yes, absolutely. But and I did gaslight myself recently with friends, with pitching them what Del Toro wanted to do with Hellboy 3. I wasn't entirely correct, but the main idea that Del Toro and Ron Perlman have said about Hellboy 3 is the main focus of it would be family, and how Hellboy, Liz, their twin children, one is an angel, one is a devil, and they're essentially trying to fit in with society while being on the run. And ultimately, something is coming to where Hellboy has to embrace his destiny. So there is that idea that was still there that Del Toro wanted to do, but Del Toro did say if people realistically wanted Hellboy 3 to be made, then Del Toro would need a budget of $129 million just to make his movie a reality.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, the studio didn't want to take a chance on that.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, though, without spoiling a lot of major films that have come out recently, it's not impossible for actors and people to come back for roles that you wouldn't think would come back. So, and you saying all that was actually going to go, was kind of going to be my final say on this film. So, it's not impossible for Hellboy 3 of, Ron Perlman's and Del Toro's one, but now, yeah, I agree with you 100%, though. I'm satisfied if this is the final story for this version of Hellboy. Now, yeah, it doesn't set up a sequel. Hellboy and his friends quit, and he's talking about, let's get a farm so our children can run around and everything like that. And we never know, did they actually get the farm? Did they get a nice place? We don't know about it. We just know they seem like they're happy with the life they're going to choose. The Golden Army's defeated, Nevada's been defeated, and yeah, there's really nothing more to this story now. It's over. The Golden Army's defeated. Whereas
Yes, I agree.
And yeah, I'm fine with that. Would I also want, from what you described, how the story would have gone, like, would I be interested to see at least this story just to wrap it up? Sure, I'd be interested in that. But am I ultimately, like, do I feel blue-balled because it's cancelled and we never got that finale movie? Not really, because even if the first one didn't get a sequel, it didn't end on setting up a sequel. It ended on, like, they defeated the villain, they're just going to go back to their job, because it's their job. It's kind of like with...
I will say that...
It was like with Carl Urban's Dread, which we also reviewed, link in the description below, where it didn't set up a sequel. It ended with just another day in the office, they went about their day.
I agree. Yes. No. And like I said, I'll just wrap up my thoughts on the film. Like, look, I love this film. It's in my top 10 favorite comic book movies of all time. I would say, in my opinion, and I think I did say it before, but I'll say it again. In terms of sequels, this is the best comic book. If not, this is one of the best comic book sequels of all time. And it's one of my favorite films of 2008, right next to the original Iron Man, The Dark Knight, and Speed Racer. And I'm satisfied with what we got. And even though we will never get a third one, that doesn't automatically mean that it's all doom and gloom. Because we live in a world where we got 2 Del Toro Hellboy movies. I think you should be thankful you even can say you got 2. And I also want to say that at this point, I'm okay if it doesn't happen, because Del Toro is now an Oscar-winning director who is moving through projects at lightning-quick speeds and can't settle down and take time to breathe for himself. And Ron Perlman, unfortunately, is just never going to be able to physically play that character again, because he's very much said that his body is not meant for all that makeup anymore. So I'm okay with... So yes.
Whenever you mention Del Toro, I just think about that one clip from Nostalgia Critic when they're like, Del Toro, you won't rehash ideas. My next movie's Pinocchio. I don't know why. Whenever I think about that actor, I just think about that joke.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But yeah, no.
Is that your final say before we wrap up?
Yeah, look, in my opinion, Hellboy, it's a great time to be a Hellboy fan, so why not go rewatch Hellboy 2?
Yeah. My final say in this film, the first film I thought was an underrated masterpiece. This film, I would also say it's not just an underrated masterpiece, it excels at what it should be, a sequel. Most sequels are either cash grabs or they're kind of all over the place on what to do because they never planned a sequel. This story, the people behind this movie had a vision and they went with it. It didn't succeed, which is unfortunate. However, these Hellboy films have been seeing loads of fans talking about it. You can watch it on streaming services. You can watch it pretty much anywhere now. Anytime it's reaching its anniversary and stuff like that, they're always re-releasing this film on either theaters or on like special DVDs. So, people, if you are interested in Hellboy, like, I've never read the comic books. I still have not read the comic books. I've watched 4 films. One was animated, which also had Ron Perlman in it. One was 2 were the movies that we've just talked about, and the third one's a film which I dread. Should we ever talk about it? But I feel as though
yes,
if Del Toro hasn't completed his trilogy, we might as well do the trilogy of Hellboy films. So inevitably, we'll talk about that film. I was one of those few people that immediately said, "Yeah, this film's gonna suck," and I'm never that sort of person that likes to say that. But we'll get to that eventually. Overall, this film is fantastic. I think people should watch it, praise it, and it's not impossible we won't get a sequel to this film, whether it's animated, audiobook, or whatever. It would be satisfying to get a conclusion. On the other hand, though, I'm happy with the film we got. So, yeah, people, after a year delay, we finally got this discussion out. Thank you, Richard, for coming back to talk about this film. And who knows, maybe we'll try and plan out more Bill and Richard videos for the future. I need to get back into the habit of doing like those sort of videos. I enjoy doing them.
Me too.
With all that said and done, thank you all so much for watching. And if you want to see some of Saber King's content, he's back to uploading videos again. It's about time, Shiny Jim. I'll leave his channel and Twitter down in the description below. And for all that said and done, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Farewell, everybody. Richard, this is the part you say goodbye.
Geronimo.
Good enough.